listening to Rootbound, a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside.
This episode of Rootbound is brought to you by plants or something. I don't know, I'm still on summer vacation. Think of a plant, like a rose, or a palm tree. There, it's brought to you by that.
Hi everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Rootbound. I am the host of the show, and my name is Steve, and Rootbound is the podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside. And each week, I invite a guest who joins me on the show to share with us all about a plant that means something to them, and then I share with the guest about a plant that means something to me, and through this process, we can all learn more about plants and learn more about each other. But as you probably heard from the non-fake ad we had today, that we are still on summer vacation, so this is going to be a bit shorter episode. It's just going to be me talking at you right now, so thank you for bearing with me. But I don't want to leave you without any fun facts or dazzling details, and we're going to circuitously get to plants today a little bit because it is summer, and there is a phenomenon happening right now that has me thinking of summer, and I just want to play a little bit of audio for you that I created to try to illustrate this phenomenon. Let's listen. So that guitar chord that you just heard, I have timed it to the increase in brightness and decrease in brightness of a firefly. I took some video outside, and then I meticulously timed that kind of like brightness curve of a firefly so I could share with you in an audio manner the sound of a firefly. But that's what I want to talk to you about today is fireflies, because they are so connected directly to summer, and they're such a cool bug. And like I said, I'm going to get to plants, but first let's talk about bugs. I learned some really interesting things about fireflies today as I was thinking about them and going down an internet rabbit hole, and the first thing I learned is about their life cycle. So like many insects, and I think most beetles, and fireflies are actually not flies, they are in fact beetles. But like most beetles, they have 4 stages of life. They start out as an egg, then they become a larva, then a pupa, then the adult. And this life cycle is pretty interesting because it's so different than I think mammals and most life cycles we think about. So most people don't realize that the firefly spends most of its life in the larval stage. And I've never seen a firefly larva. I think you have to look really carefully in the right places to see them. But they're there, and they spend most of their life, sometimes several years, in the larval state. So let's talk to the life cycle specifically. So an adult will lay an egg, normally in a moist area, some leaf litter, maybe on a tree, somewhere safe. The egg hatches, and it becomes a larva. And that larva cruises around and hunts for soft-bodied invertebrates. Yes, fireflies are predators. Isn't that cool? So the larva crawls around, and it attacks slugs, it attacks snails, it attacks other small insects, and that's how it survives. So one thing I didn't actually realize today is how important firefly larvae are at pest control and pest management, because they eat certain things. They have this niche for hunting certain kinds of small creatures in and amongst the stuff on the ground, right? They're down there, they're hunting, they have very powerful jaws. They apparently bite the prey and then inject a digestive liquid into them. It's pretty hardcore. I never thought about that for a firefly larva. So then when winter comes, they bury themselves underground and they overwinter underground. At least most of them do. I think some overwinter in other places. Let's actually just back up a little bit and say that there's over 2,000 species of firefly in the world. And in Northern Virginia, where I live, I think there's at least 75 different species. So I actually don't know what species I see most commonly. I don't know if I'm seeing a mixture of species. They say you can tell from the color and the pattern of the fireflies. And most of them, I think, have this greenish color and have kind of the same pattern. But I've been in places where I've seen other patterns and things like that. But that's really interesting. So They're also in a few different genera, so like they're not all the same. Some of them overwinter underground, some of them overwinter in like the grooves of trees, and the life cycles can vary a little bit, but more or less, I'm telling you the general life cycle of a firefly. So after they overwinter and they have eaten enough and they have grown enough in that larval stage, they will form a pupa, and in that way they metamorphosize into the adult firefly that we all know and love from summertime. And then the adults fly around, and the firefly part is a courtship ritual. That's how they attract their mate. They fly around, and that lighting effect is species specific, and so that's how they can find each other. And one really cool fact I learned is there are some apparently female fireflies that will imitate the glow of a different species in order to attract them and then eat them, which is also pretty hardcore for a firefly. The other thing that I learned, and this is where it's not clear, I got to get into specific species, and if this was a bug podcast, I would do even more of this, but some adult fireflies don't eat at all. From what I understand, they don't even have mouth parts, so their whole job is just to mate, lay eggs, and get ready for the next generation. But I think some firefly adults do eat, like those female fireflies that eat other fireflies, but also some of them eat nectar and pollen. And so I think there is some evidence that fireflies are also pollinators, which is pretty cool. So why am I talking about fireflies on a podcast about plants? And that's because they are really linked to plants, like everything. The first thing that I read about that connected fireflies to plants is that during the day, they chill out on plants while they wait for night because they can't do their glowing thing when it's daytime. And I actually saw one today. I was walking by, and on one of my sunchokes, I saw a little firefly just chilling there, waiting for it to get dark. And if we're in areas that don't have lots of plants, there's less places for the fireflies to chill out on. So like you're not going to find fireflies like in the middle of a giant parking lot at the mall, right? They won't be there because they need plants to chill on. And then the second thing is what I mentioned before, is that some adult fireflies eat pollen and nectar. At least that's what I read. I'm not sure if the species in my area do that, but some of the 2,000 different species do eat pollen and nectar in their adult phase. They're carnivorous, really carnivorous as little larvae, but I guess some of them do eat nectar and pollen as adults. And then I think the third and the most important connection to plants, and this is something we talked about back on the fall episode, is that the larvae rely on the cover of leaf litter, of all the plant matter on the ground for hunting, for hiding from other predators, and generally just surviving. That is their habitat. So in areas where we overly rake, we completely sanitize the ground of any decaying matter, the firefly larvae have nowhere to hunt, and then there will not be any adult fireflies. So there has been kind of this talk on the internet over the years of like, where have the fireflies gone? And I think our habits of treating our landscapes in modern urban places has led to them having less habitat. And so one thing that I have been trying to do in my yard every year now is I don't rake my leaves. I just leave them and they go away really quickly. It's like kind of, it should be obvious, and we talked about that in the fall episode. Like they decompose really quick, and that area where there's lots of leaves is apparently great home for fireflies. And my yard has tons of fireflies, and I will say that my yard probably has more fireflies than anyone else in the neighborhood. So I'm very proud of that fact that we're keeping the habitat for the fireflies together. And yeah, plants, even for a predator bug like the firefly, plants are very important habitat and also food source, and they're part of that healthy ecosystem that fireflies are such a great literal beacon of because of their cool lighting effects. But when there's a healthy ecosystem, there are lots of fireflies, and so seeing them in my yard fills me with joy. And so I thought I would share with you about fireflies, their relationships with plants, and let's hear a little bit more of that firefly sound. And on that sound, that guitar sound that I turned into the fireflies crescendo is actually from a song called Firefly by my friend Jane. You met her back on the avocado episode. Her artist name is Soraya, and I'll put links to her music in the show notes, but this is a song called Firefly. Let's go out with that and enjoy. And thank you so much for listening to this summer vacation episode of Rootbound.
Safe in here, I think I need fire. With a man whose eyes are a warrior's. 1,000 men whose hands fell in a summer. Now the cold stabs him like a thorn. It's no more than cold, dear. The winter sun's never quite warm enough, so let me. It's no more than snow, dear. You're holding me ransom, so why don't you fight me? Oh, those fireflies will light the way this night. So to see all of all that push and dragging you. Keep your curtains close on top of your temples, and I know you're fine in your sorrows, 'cause it's true. It takes time to become all the one you never knew. It's no more than fright, dear. It's all the same when you got something to lose here. It's no more than pain, dear. Has it ever been easy to find our way to safety? All those fireflies will light the way this night. So to see all of all that push and dragging you. Oh, those fireflies are all alone. To push and dragging you.
Some quick credits here on this special summer vacation episode. Rootbound is hosted by me, Steve. Music by Christian Kriegskota. Fake ads by David Lonnie. We also heard music from Soraya, the song Firefly. There'll be a link in the show notes. And thank you for listening to this episode of Rootbound. Rootbound is a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside, but if you can go outside, go out at night and look for fireflies.
Rootbound is sponsored by Leaves, or whatever you pick. I don't care. I'm out of here.